Welcome to You Decide. I'm your host, Errol Lewis, and we are quickly approaching the June 24th Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. Early voting starts on the 14th, 10 days earlier. The pace is picking up. A lot of the candidates have received their matching funds from the Campaign Finance Board. The ads are all over the airwaves. One of those candidates is Brad Lander, the city controller. Before becoming controller, he represented a city council district in Brooklyn. He also co-founded the council's Progressive Caucus. He has served as the director of the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center for Community Development. He's got proposals that include the following, and this is only a partial list: ending street homelessness for people with serious mental health conditions, improving New York City Housing Authority by increasing investment and leveraging resident feedback, guaranteeing childcare and after-school programs for all young New Yorkers. He is certainly one of the more recognizable names on the ballot. He's a familiar face to many New Yorkers. You can find out more about him on his website, and he's here to talk about his run for mayor. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You and I have some history that is worth recounting.
Yes.
When we first met in the 1990s, both of us were in an entirely different line of work. I was running an economic development project in central Brooklyn, and I believe you were at the Fifth Avenue Committee.
That's right.
And this is an organization that I know to do housing, but it actually did a lot more. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was founded in the 1970s when Brooklyn neighborhoods, so many of them were abandoned, and neighbors came together and said, we got to rehab these buildings and bring them back to life and make it affordable housing so working class families can stay in our neighborhood. But it was a lot more than that. Some of the buildings had storefronts, so you wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for small businesses. People wanted more safety in their neighborhood, so you were taking an abandoned lot and cleaning it up and making it a community garden or a pocket park. And then we created a whole bunch of workforce development and job training programs in commercial driving and network cable installation. And now, 25 years later, 10,000 people are in good living wage careers. I'm actually going to the celebration tonight for Brooklyn Workforce Innovation. So yeah, it's affordable housing, community development, and building neighborhood leadership. That's what I learned most there.
You started that truck driving program?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. I know. I mean, it was a big deal because it turns out that long-haul trucking, I don't know what's going on now with automated vehicles out there, but it's a great job.
Yeah.
Pays very well, and there's been a driver shortage since forever. And it actually doesn't take, you don't need a whole lot of credentials to be able to get into it.
Those were the things we look for. What in 6 weeks to 3 months could you help somebody learn, who doesn't have, college credits, in some cases even a high school degree, who can then go on and have a good job and pay the bills in this expensive city. So truck driving, cable installation for networks, some woodworking, now even helping with affordable housing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I support cable installation for sure. I know in one of your appearances, you mentioned a community leader that I worked with and greatly respected, Ibon Muhammad. Her husband, Bilal, was a friend.
Yes.
She was one of the people you work with.
Yeah, so she did this amazing thing. On the block of St. John's Place between 5th and 6th in Brooklyn, there were 102 apartments that had been built by a private developer with some HUD financing. And I guess he didn't, he defaulted. HUD showed up and said, y'all have 90 days to leave. And Ibon Muhammad, this mother of 4, said, no way are we leaving, organized her neighbors and said, not only HUD are you not kicking us out, you're going to turn these buildings over to us. 40 years later, 102 Black and Puerto Rican families own that block as a limited equity cooperative, permanently affordable home ownership. And like she and other people like her, Kali and Doy and Dahlia Lugo, they taught me what it means to be a New Yorker. Yes. Like you don't quit on your neighbors, you fight to stay. When you need, you show HUD like what's what. And they hired me and said, we need your help navigating this bureaucracy, figuring out how to get the financing, putting the teams together. And that's what I learned to do there and have loved doing, building and preserving affordable housing, making government systems work better, connecting the dots on good jobs. Yeah, I feel really blessed for that part of my career.
How and when did you get to New York?
So I came to New York in 1992. I'm originally from the Midwest, graduated from University of Chicago, spent 1 year getting a master's degree in London. My wife came to law school here at NYU in 1992, and that's when we came here, moved to Brooklyn. And my kids my kids are native New Yorkers. Yes. They remind me that I'm not.
And by the way, since we're talking about the Fifth Avenue Committee, did you support the rezoning of 4th Avenue?
Yes, well, they went in two phases. The first phase did not include any affordable housing.
Right.
So that phase, no. I mean, it was the Bloomberg administration's first rezoning.
Yes.
And they basically traded down zoning most of Park Slope for up zoning 4th Avenue. And we went back and said, let's include some affordable units. And that's what set off the effort that eventually became mandatory inclusionary housing. A few years later, when I was the champion for the Gowanus rezoning in the city council, that's now generating 8,000 units. We went back, and not only did we upzone the area around the canal, we went back and mapped 4th Avenue even a little higher than it had been. So that it could include affordable units as well.
I mean, those, I don't know what my listeners know about this area, but 4th Avenue from, say, Atlantic Avenue south for about, 10 or 20 blocks was the primary rezoning area. And when you see those big apartment buildings along there, it was done as part of a rezoning. And
now, I don't know, again, if they know the area around the Gowanus Canal, but there's more housing going up there than anywhere in New York City at the moment. 8,000 new homes, 3,000 of them genuinely affordable, low-income and working-class families. And we got the public housing nearby renovated because we weren't going to build new affordable units if existing low-income tenants are living in terrible conditions. Affordable artist studios, a lot of infrastructure investments. We can grow this city in a way that people feel good about.
Yeah, that was a very special area. I spent a lot of time down there, not only because my son was in school in Red Hook, so I had to cross through it, but also on the weekends, he went to, music. He took a lot of music lessons, a lot of arts, rock climbing, all of this fun stuff going on in Gowanus. Okay. I was at the Pratt Center in 2000 to 2002 or so under Ron Schiffman, great guy, wonderful developer. You later became director of the Pratt Center. And it dovetails with a proposal of yours. You're running for mayor, and you've talked about citizen assemblies. And this is the kind of thing the Pratt Center really specialized in for 40 or 50 years, making sure that citizens had input into planning decisions in particular. Talk a little bit about how you would make that part of governance if you become mayor.
So here's the challenge as I see it. If you say to people, do we have an affordable housing crisis? Of course, everyone says yes. If you say, well, does that mean we need to build a lot more housing all around New York City? Almost everyone says yes. And if you say, how about on your block? People say, not so fast.
Not so fast.
So the question is, how do you get people on board for a vision of growth that actually people can support? And that's the idea of a citizens assembly. You bring people together from all across the city and say, hey, we've got this problem. We need a moonshot goal of 500,000 new homes over the next 10 years. What are the principles that are going to help us get there? Let's really be honest about it. We want to make there be some pathway to affordable homeownership, like that block of St. John's. Not only rentals, of course, we need some rentals. It can't be in floodplains. We want it near transit. We need it at a real range of incomes. Let's get some principles that people can share. And you might even get down to kind of the micro level. Some people might be in neighborhoods prone to flooding, and they might need to live nearby. Can we upzone and have some more density not too far away? And then at the end, you have a citywide framework for the growth and affordable housing that we've set as collectively as a city we want. And so now, when there's a specific proposal, whether it's from an individual developer or from City Hall, you can compare it to something, to the vision that Citizens Assembly set out. So now it's not developer versus community. It's that Citizens Assembly said, here's the principles of housing. Does this project comply with them? And if it does, we'll streamline our land use review process. And instead of it taking 9 months, it could take 3 months, and assume that it passes if it's aligned with the vision of that Citizens Assembly, rather than, have to go through so many hoops.
Now, in theory, isn't it the job of the borough presidents to do some of this through the community boards? I mean, the community boards, they're called community boards, community planning boards. They're supposed to come up with some idea about what they want within their boundaries.
The community planning boards absolutely need to be included in the process so that they can say, hey, if we're going to have growth in our neighborhood, we also need to get a new sanitation garage in our neighborhood because the trucks, are going through. Or, okay, we're open to more housing, but we need a community center for the kids. So they absolutely need to be involved. But right now, no one represents the citywide interest in affordability and inclusive growth. So a proposal comes to the community board just from a developer, and they're representing the interest of the community. But it's more like the answer to that third question, often not so fast. The Citizens Assembly is designed to answer those first two questions. What's a vision New Yorkers share for genuinely affordable and inclusive growth that then sets that table? Okay, we want more affordable homeownership. We want more affordable housing. It should be in great family-friendly neighborhoods. That rarely enters the conversation. Are there going to be courtyards? Is there going to be childcare?
Sure.
Let's lay that vision out so that the push for growth is not just kind of some finger wagging or a developer's bottom line. It's a shared broad vision of the city.
In theory, a 197A plan would do that, right? It's a little used provision of the city charter that allows for
I love
like
197A plans, which let communities plan. But again, they are generally developed by one neighborhood or one community. So this bigger shared interest we have that we need more housing, but we want to have some say on the broad principles for it. That, I mean, I'm a longtime advocate of what's called comprehensive planning, where communities are involved, but there's this broader process. The idea of a citizens assembly is to let regular New Yorkers from neighborhoods sit together, but do it in a way that's keeping an eye on that big picture, not just our neighborhood, critical for the community board to do, but our city. And right now, that really doesn't exist.
So explain how your housing plan would work. I think your number was 500,000 apartments.
Yeah.
Is that what, over a 10-year period?
Yes.
Okay, how do you get that done?
Yeah, a lot of things we have to do. I mean, I did support, there's a lot of places where we're making transit investments, like that new Interborough Express that's going to run from Brooklyn to Queens. We aren't yet planning, okay, that's an area where you could now have new growth along a transit line. There's areas appropriate for rezoning, like I did in Gowanus, the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, Long Island City. I support more density, kind of, modest density in every neighborhood on the model of City of Yes. My most fun plan, though, is that I was surprised to learn that the city of New York owns 12 golf courses, 2,500 acres in a land-starved city, and fewer people play golf than used to. Now, I got no problem with golf.
Don't piss off the golf people.
I'm not against the golfers. I really am not. I think 8 courses owned by the city will be enough for tee times. On the other 4, we could build new, family-friendly, inspiring neighborhoods with 50,000 homes. And because the city owns the land, you can do something like a modern-day Mitchell-Lama, where you can have affordable homeownership for working-class families and keep that housing permanently affordable. And in great new neighborhoods, I mean, think about what we could design if we think what kind of modern-day parks and community centers and spaces for childcare and courtyards and dense housing that New Yorkers own. So I know some people, smirk at it as though it's like a campaign.
I'm not smirking, but I worked as a caddy as a teenager, and golf people are very determined. I would almost say fanatical. I wouldn't kick that hornet's nest, but I'm not a politician.
Still be 8 golf courses. I don't know. I'm going out to Metro IAF this weekend. That's the largely black ministers and churches that led the effort to build Spring Creek, and I was up with them on a roof looking out over what's happened out there.
Yeah.
And it's pretty inspiring. And if we want homes for working class New Yorkers, for new New Yorkers, we're going to have to find some big, bold swings.
Okay. A lot of those preachers played golf too, by the way. You're going to find that out.
They were excited about this proposal.
So tell me this: have you even indirectly run this by like developers? I mean, do they want this stuff? Do they think they can turn this into the explosion of housing you're describing?
I mean, the people who build housing know we need to find new places to build housing, and there's plenty of other spots. As I said, there's the Interborough Express and a bunch of neighborhood rezonings, and a lot we could do in every neighborhood. But the idea of whole new neighborhoods, like, genuinely 21st century, what does New York City look like if we build it still dense and urban and proximate to transit and the kind of, not like we did one problem with the prior era Mitchell-Lama and public housing, which provides critical housing for so many people, is they did a sort of towers on the park style of urban design. We could do contemporary design and build a lot of housing people would really be excited to live in.
In your former council district, which I guess is where you still live, this Errol Linen project. Not going to get into the weeds with it, but it's the kind of project where you're taking nothing away from what you did with the Gowanus rezoning, but it took years, took a lot of work. The Arrow Linen rezoning looks like it's going to have a lot of the normal kind of, for New York, opposition that's just there. It's implacable. It wears you down. It trims the project. Sometimes it stops the project. Are you up for having 5 or 10 of those fights?
Well, first I'll say, I know in Gowanus, though it took a few years, 8,000 units were approved, and the community board voted in favor because we were able to design it in a way that people are excited about that neighborhood. So yes, there are tough fights. The idea for that citizens' assembly is to say we do need New York broadly on board for housing growth. And right now we don't have that. So the idea there is to say it's our collective policy that we want to confront the housing affordability crisis. Now, building's not the only thing. Every tenant who's facing eviction in housing court is supposed to have a lawyer. Eric Adams has totally failed on it. I'll get it done. HPD and NYCHA are both broken agencies. I'm the only one with plans to make them both work better, streamline processes, but setting a shared agenda for housing growth and then using that to drive projects all across the city. Yeah, that's really not just am I up for it. It's why I'm running for mayor.
Did you commit on a rent freeze?
For this year, I believe that rent freeze is appropriate. Net operating income was up 12% last year. Eric Adams has given 3 big rent increases over the last 3 years. But you have to look at the data every year. What I always want, I testify every year in front of the Rent Guidelines Board. And I always want to keep rents as low as possible, consistent with repairs being done and the heat being on and the super getting a raise and the insurance being paid. You got to keep that housing in good shape for tenants. And, I've done a lot of transactions in the Comptroller's office that help make sure we preserve affordable housing. Probably my best investment of the pension funds is when Signature Bank failed, 35,000 units of rent-stabilized housing were put at risk because they held the mortgages. I reached out to a couple of our asset managers, and we bought the mortgages on all 35,000 units. Every one is still affordable rent-stabilized housing. 11% returns for the teachers and cops and firefighters, who made the investment. But that means you have to make sure it's a good investment. And so, of course, there are modest rent increases over time to pay the bills, but you want to keep them as low as possible. So for rent-stabilized tenants this year, I think rent freeze.
So 11%, I'm like, hey, can I get in on that? Your first TV commercial calls Andrew Cuomo, quote, corrupt. Do you mean that in a legal sense? You think he's committed a crime?
I do. I don't trust Donald Trump's DOJ for anything at all, but I do. The evidence suggests, the New York Times reported this, that after sending seniors to their deaths in nursing homes, which, may have been an honest mistake when he did it, we don't have enough information there, he personally marked up the Department of Health report to undercount the number of deaths in nursing homes from COVID, in no small part because he had gotten a $5 million book deal. Also, I think with some evidence of corruption, that staff worked on it on the people's time while he got a $5 million personal payment. And then he lied about it to Congress, which is a felony. But even worse is lying to the family members. This is someone who created the Moreland Commission to look at corruption, but as soon as it got too close to him, shut it down. His closest aide, Joe Percoco, was indicted for corruption. So yes, I mean it literally.
Do you consider him a bully? Why do you think he's leading in the polls?
I think he has a lot of name recognition off his father's name, and it's a time of Trumpian people are just distracted, so name recognition goes a long way. The pandemic functioned to erase people's memories of some things, including the sexual harassment and the nursing home deaths and a lot of the summer of hell on the subways. And yeah, I think it is a time when it's like a zeitgeist where people mistake bullies for leaders. Even in how he talks about dealing with Trump. When Elon Musk stole $80 million, I found it. I called it out. I forced the law department into court to get it back. When Ross Baraka was arrested, I hustled over there to be there and say, let him out. When Andrew Cuomo talks about Donald Trump, he talks about pointing his finger at his chest as though it's some kind of bro bumping. So, my candidacy is premised on the idea that people want somebody honest, that people want someone who has big, bold solutions on affordable housing and childcare, and just a more straightforward, no-nonsense track record of working hard every day to get it done.
You cussed Andrew Cuomo out in Yiddish for suggesting that you hang out with or run with or tolerate anti-Semites. What was that all about?
I mean, this one I felt very personally. I am a proud Jewish New Yorker. I mean, it's like hard to be more of a Jewish New Yorker than me. I'm the highest ranking Jewish elected official in city government. I love what this city has been for Jews, not only for Jews, but we spent 2,000 years, getting the shit kicked out of us around the world. And this place has enabled us, lots of others. I mean, folks from the Caribbean and China and the Dominican and Muslims. But Jews have been able to succeed and thrive here and be safe here. And I care about that immensely, like raising my kids in the city, incredible. And I'm a, proud synagogue member. And yeah, the idea that he would go into a synagogue on the Upper West Side in a city where he hasn't lived for 25 years, not a Jew, and attack me and Adrian Adams and Zoran Mamdani, it made me say, "Geh kachen auf in Yam," which is go shit in the ocean. I mean, it's just for political purposes. Yeah. He created a phony nonprofit. He's just doing this because he thinks it's good politics. But Donald Trump attacked Chuck Schumer and said he wasn't Jewish. Eric Adams created a whole new ballot line of Stop Antisemitism, and Andrew Cuomo's going to attack me. Jews are tired of being treated like political pawns by Trump or Adams or Cuomo, and I've had enough of it.
I hear you. This has been an interesting moment where you see the White House doing all kinds of things in the name of combating anti-Semitism, and I'm thinking, I don't know a lot of Jewish people, and I don't hear them complaining or complaining in a way that calls for these particular responses.
Agreed. Look, anti-Semitism is on the rise, and people want a response. I mean, after these two kids were killed in Washington, in D.C., I was heartbroken. I go to a lot of Jewish communal events, and that weekend, synagogues and Jewish communal institutions wanted to know they could get an NYPD car out in front of the synagogue. And of course, it should be easier to do that. And we should be looking online for signs of hate. So I have plans to strengthen the NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force, do education. I went to this amazing anti-Asian hate program where high school students are taught by this organization, CACF, and then they teach their students. I went to Midwood High School where a young Chinese student taught a class for her diverse classmates about history and culture of Asian American students globally and in New York City and how hate affects them. And I thought, let's do this where every kid gets to learn a little bit. So there's a lot to do. But yes, that's for real, trying to solve problems, not like Trumpian attacking Harvard or scooping up kids for writing op-eds or being involved in nonviolent protests. Jews do well where there's inclusive multiracial democracy and civil rights are protected, and this idea of making war on the old civil rights coalition, it's a right-wing idea.
I mean, where you're coming from, I remember we had a wonderful luncheon where you met with some of my neighbors in Crown Heights, who I was a little surprised that they had never met you, and I was thinking, you've got this prominent Jewish politician, you should know each other, But what I found striking about that was I had never heard you talk about your relationship to the Zionist movement, your relationship to, I take you as a traditional two-state solution guy, if you want to put it in political terms, but it's also a cultural question for you as well.
Oh yeah, I'm inspired. This is the tension. Our people have this 2,000-year history of wandering around the planet. And the fact that some people all that time prayed toward Jerusalem, wanted to get back there. Now, I love the diaspora. I love the diaspora. I curse in Yiddish, it's, and I love Brooklyn as a Jewish place. At the same time, that was a real longing and aspiration. Now, it went in a complicated way, and it's a really complicated history. And of course, Palestinians also care about that land, have a long and deep history on it, and are reckoning with that history is really hard right now. And what happened on October 7th horrified me. And I, condemned it in no uncertain terms. But the way that Netanyahu has then had this brutal response that's now starving Palestinian families also horrifies me. The Declaration of Independence of Israel in 1948 said it should be a state open to the ingathering of Jewish exiles, but also with full social and political equality for all its residents, regardless of religion or race. That can only happen if Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza ends, not just that the war ends. But yes, I'm inspired by the vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, but that can only happen if the war ends and there is mutual recognition and self-determination and peace, both for Israelis and Palestinians. That is not that's something the New York City mayor can do, but it has become an issue in the
Well, you got to have an opinion about it for sure,
so
right?
I can just be honest about how I view it.
Well, I mean, with all of the protests that are going on, not just on college campuses, but in general, there is this question of, what should be done and what should be the public discussion and who's going to conduct that public discussion. And the mayor, as far as I can tell, has always been part of those kinds of conversations in New York, right?
Yes, I wish right now it was more convening and helping people have dialogue across sharp lines of difference. And of course, some things are out of bounds. And when people threaten other people's safety, that's out of bounds. But a lot of people who are nonviolent on both sides of this line and feel passionately aren't finding ways to talk to each other right now. There's just been like a flattening of an erosion of empathy. War does that, and somehow it's leaked over here too. So yeah, I would hope as mayor, as a Jewish mayor who feels passionately about this, but also really believes in the full humanity and rights of Palestinians and Muslims more broadly, that just like inspired by that Asian student Julie Su at Midwood High School,
sure,
I could use City Hall as a vehicle for bringing people together for better dialogue.
You are not a DSA member, Democratic Socialists of America. You've never run with their support. Why do people accuse you or think that you're a socialist?
I mean, I believe in building a lot more affordable housing. I want to see Medicare for all. I helped, along with Jumaane Williams, lead the effort to reduce discriminatory stop and frisk. I worked hard to promote desegregation of the middle schools of District 15. I really have fought for workers. My legislation made us the first city in the country to give a minimum wage for Uber drivers and deliveristas and predictable schedules for fast food workers. So, I mean, I'm a progressive in that I want government to lift people up and confront inequality. I've always also been really pragmatic. I want government to work. I don't know. It's a city of a lot of opinions, and so.
Well, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsed you for controller 4 years ago.
She did.
Is she likely to support you for mayor?
I would love to have her support in this race.
Well, that's probably where this comes from, right? People who are DSA candidates and officials seem to like you. They think that you're close enough to where they're going that they think they want you around.
I mean, I'm a long time, a founding member of the Working Families Party. So, and again, there's things that, I like what AOC and Bernie are doing on this fighting oligarchy tour. I think that vision of how does our party show up for working class people really matters. But yes, I don't support, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. I am not a DSA member. And more than that, though, I guess what I think distinguishes me in this race is having ambitious vision for government, but really focusing on the practical, how you get it done details. That's why I ran for controller. I want to know how you manage money effectively, make sure those pension funds get returns while investing in affordable housing, audit every city agency, because there is a lot of waste and bureaucracy in government.
Yeah.
So I don't, to me, those things can be progressive too. I mean, making government run better, making good use of taxpayer dollars, getting the garbage picked up equally in every neighborhood. Yeah. People want that.
Yeah, there's nothing progressive about wasting money. I think we all agree on that. Yeah. Of the audits that you've done of city agencies as required as part of your job, what's an agency that you've seen where, you're thinking, hey, if I win this on January 1st, the day I get sworn in, we're going after agency X?
Well, the biggest single thing, and it's at a number of agencies, is last year, we paid out $2 billion in claims against New York City. Yes. Traffic crashes caused by city vehicles, police misconduct, trip and falls. Right now, it's no one's responsibility to reduce that. They don't sit on the agency books. So right now, the general fund just pays them all out. We help settle them in the controller's office. But so the first thing I want to do is take those claims, put them on the books, the budget of the agencies that cause them, and say to the commissioner, if you can reduce those traffic crashes that your vehicles are causing below the 5-year trend line, you can keep half the savings. And so that's like a big I think the biggest single area we could save is by restructuring the incentives of claims. And the nice thing about that is that's all things we don't want to happen.
I mean, the main claims are NYPD and health and hospitals, right? Medical malpractice in the hospitals.
The biggest single one is traffic crashes caused by city vehicles. And we don't have speed delimiters in the cars. We don't have consequences for drivers that speed and run red lights and cause crashes.
It's not just the garbage trucks or the fire engines? I mean, those are the ambulances, the emergency vehicles. Right?
It's a bunch. Police, parks, DOT. But none of them have incentives in place to reduce them.
How about that?
We all could.
Interesting. Are there other jurisdictions that do that?
Yes. Yeah, we did a study, especially on traffic crashes that have speed delimiters. I don't know places that make sure each agency has that responsibility.
I mean, if you rent a car, they know enough about where you're going because they've got little transponders on it, right? That's got to be true for city vehicles too, right?
Some have transponders and some don't, but yes, they all can.
Okay, I like that. That's an interesting one. Let's talk about public safety and the disorder that comes with untreated mental illness, which is, kind of a version or at least part of the conversation. What's your plan?
Yeah, and I'll stay here. I just want to be real honest here because I have said a lot of times on the campaign trail, and I mean it, that I think progressives, myself included, were slow to reckon with rising disorder and crime coming through and out of the pandemic. And we're paying for it socially and politically. And that's part of why the number one commitment, the first thing I pledged in this race, is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. It's awful to have a couple thousand of our neighbors sleeping on the subways or sidewalks or stoops of our buildings. And it's so visible, makes people feel unsafe when you get on the subway. It turns out we did a really deep dive on this. Only about 2,000 people who are unsheltered, sleeping on the streets, and have serious mental illness. Meanwhile, we have 2,500 vacant supportive housing and single room occupancy units, but they're not eligible because what they're supposed to do is go to shelter first. And a lot of folks have had bad experiences in shelters, so they stay on the street. If they get to a place where they're a danger to themselves or others, you could put them in the hospital, then they just come right back out again.
Sure.
So there's this plan model called Housing First, where instead of making people go to shelter, they can go straight from the subway into one of those supportive housing units with services. It works 70 to 90% of the time. They're doing it in Houston, in Denver, in Salt Lake City. So I've got a really detailed plan, like mayor will be watching. How many placements are we getting? Don't let folks fall through the cracks. When they have to go to the hospital, take them. When they come out, make sure they get housing. Use this model of Housing First. We can really dramatically reduce.
You said we have 2,500 unused supportive housing beds. Are you counting like respite drop-in temporary beds?
No, I'm talking about permanent supportive housing. The respite beds are also good. Yeah. And look, we need a shelter system. Yes. So, but no, this is permanent supportive housing.
Okay, very interesting. Let's talk about the economy. From 2019 to 2023, this is from your website, the city lost over 76,000 middle-income jobs, which is nearly 5% of all such jobs.
Yeah.
And we've got to turn that around, right? We need people who can stay here, and the only way to do that is to make sure. What's your plan for how do you do that?
Yeah. So there's two parts to this plan. One is growing the good jobs and making sure we connect our people to them. And the good jobs tend to be in technology, some in the arts, in finance, there's some good middle skill technical jobs, like we were talking about those network cable installers. Mm-hmm. So focus on those. Provide the investments that help people grow them here, support those sectors, and then work with CUNY and our high schools to prepare people for them. There's a great STEAM center in the Brooklyn Navy Yard that trains people for good jobs. We should have those in every
I visited
borough.
them. They teach them like food service, chefs, how to run a restaurant.
Correct. And it's a real interesting mix because, some in the restaurants and then some in the arts to learn the lighting tech or the podcast making, So that is great and more of that. Then there are jobs we need, but that currently aren't good jobs. Healthcare, childcare, home care are the big ones right now. That's what's growing because we have more older people. We got a lot of young people. We have a lot of healthcare needs. We have to work to make those jobs better. I mean, you shouldn't be a childcare worker who's being hired to take care of other people's kids, and you can't afford to take care of your own. So, there we can do a few things. Obviously, providing universal childcare helps, and paying people enough to provide it really helps. I mentioned the bills I passed to make sure fast food workers, Uber and Lyft drivers, deliveristas, freelancers don't get cheated. In the Comptroller's office, we've recovered over $10 million for people that were cheated out of prevailing wages. I haven't attacked Andrew Cuomo that much on this podcast, but here's one you haven't heard. During COVID, he forced the MTA hire several hundred people on contract to clean the subway cars right at the height of the pandemic.
That's right.
Denied them health care and refused to pay them the prevailing wage. My office went into court and is winning a prevailing wage payments, $2.3 million for those subway
That was
cleaners.
crazy, risky frontline stuff. These are people who would scrub down the subways every night. And so they had to travel to get there.
We thought that was how you got COVID.
Yeah,
And yes, we didn't even give them a prevailing wage. So that's a shame on Andrew Cuomo. But the flip side is they're supposed to be prevailing wage jobs. So at least they would be pay enough to feed your family.
I want to urge everybody to go check out your website because we're skipping over a lot of it. We're just talking about I wanted to get give a little taste to my listeners of what you're up to. But each one of these proposals, you have like a 9-page paper with this full of numbers and so forth. It's really good.
I have the curse or blessing of being a wonk, and I try to just make people feel how much better the city will be when it's not corrupt, when it's well run, when it's safer and affordable. Yeah. But yes, there are detailed plans on every one of these topics.
You know what? Say a word about the current mayor, because more and more I'm starting to realize Eric Adams is going to be a factor. So in your best case scenario, you become the Democratic nominee, then you got to run against Eric Adams.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Adams has managed to knock himself out spectacularly. He already, in my opinion, wasn't doing a good job before the corruption. We weren't really dealing with housing and safety, and he's a good promiser. He makes people feel that he identifies with them, but then just didn't set up a high-quality government to deliver on promises. But yes, the corruption, it's just real. Don't sell the city out for campaign contributions and first-class upgrades. We did an audit of that Turkish consulate. They really did force an approval of that building, even though it didn't have a fire safety plan.
Still doesn't, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then selling us out to Donald Trump. So to me, the question is, I think New York wants to turn the page on corruption. And that not only means kicking out Eric Adams, it means not letting Andrew Cuomo back in the door.
Did you feel driven to do this? You had a sort of a relatively safe seat as an incumbent city controller.
Yes, I mean, I like the job. I'm good at the job. We're rooting out corruption. We're putting out great economic reports. I felt and feel very strongly that neither Eric Adams nor Andrew Cuomo should be the mayor of New York City. They will not lead it well. Of the candidates in the field, I believe I have the best chance of providing the leadership the city needs, especially with Donald Trump in the White House, but also just to deliver. There's a lot of folks in this race with good ideas, compelling ideas. I don't see another candidate in the race with a track record of public integrity, with a bold set of solutions on affordability, community development, better jobs, safe communities, and a real track record of experienced leadership to get it done.
Are there formal or informal conversations going on between you and some of the other candidates? Because in a ranked choice voting system, as we've explained ad nauseum on this podcast, it's meant to. It's a feature, not a bug. It encourages the creation of alliances and tickets and mutual endorsements. Is that going on? Are we at that phase
lips
yet?
are moving. I mean, people are talking. I say often, had Maya Wiley and Catherine Garcia cross-endorsed each other a few weeks out from the 2021 election, I think one of them would be.
We'd have had our first woman mayor of New York
today.
Yeah, very good. Okay, best of luck. See you out on the campaign trail. See you at the debates.
This was a lot of fun. Excited for the debates.
Yeah, well, this is my prep for the debates. Okay, good
Thank
enough.
you.
Thanks. Do you want more conversations with the people who are shaping the future of New York City and beyond? Check out our New York One podcast channel in the description. And hit subscribe to let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues.